This is Comic Picks by the Glick.
Hey, I'm your host, Jason Glick.
Hey, Jason Glick, what's going on?
Hey, John. Well, it's like talking about a series that I've been talking about for wow. It's like according to like the timestamps on my it's like my posts for like this on the blog. It's like 10 years now. Wow.
Wow,
Yes.
it's quite a lot of time, but hey, what do you got? What
Yeah.
is
So
this thing?
yeah. So this is American Vampire by Scott Snyder and Rafael Albuquerque. Mostly by them. I say this mostly because while Albuquerque hasn't illustrated every issue of the series, Snyder, well, he's written like the majority of the series, but he's also not responsible for like some of the earliest stuff. And I'm saying this because this is a series about this is a series that basically like seeks to, you know, um, explain like like American history from like from like a vampiric perspective. Basically, it's like the series starts off in the Roaring Twenties with this one girl, Pearl Jones, trying to become like like a Hollywood actress, like trying to like hey, like she wants to like become like a big American star. It's like in this era, and when she gets an invitation to attend this producers like this one producers parties, like she hears like this is her big shot. But it turns out that these producers are actually like vampires from the old world, and they're just like preying on it's like on it's like on her and any other like girls who are like, like silly enough to like like to buy like to buy into the offer of like greatness that's being offered. Well, it's like Pearl managed to barely survive this after being dumped out into the California desert. It's like after this party. Well, the thing is, like, she gets turned into a proper vampire by someone who's actually like survived an encounter with these kinds of vampires. A guy by the name of Skinner Sweet. It's like he sees something in her and believes that she can like liven up this like this new century, this new like American century that that's like that the that that's being offered here. It's like he's someone who he's like an old school like train robber like outlaw. It's like and he thinks that like she can like offer something like the same kind of like chaos and darkness that he's brought like to this world as well. Pearl, however, like she is not really like Skinner's like on Skinner's level. She understands what's been done to her, but she also kind of believes in justice and progressiveness, and so like she only wants to like bring like like bring these like old vampires to justice, but also deal with like the wrongs that were done to her as well by her friend like at the same time, and that's what and on one hand that's the main story. That's what its main writer and creator Scott Snyder along with artist Rafael Albuquerque have done to this series because at the time the series came out, Snyder had been making his made a name for himself by writing like Batman Batman stories, primarily on like his Detective Comics run, where he basically showed us like, hey, Dick Grayson as Batman can actually work. And then when the New 52 came around, he gave us one of the all-time great um Batman runs where he just got to write Bruce Wayne proper and just gave us like stories that were just like like thoroughly entertaining and just like and further our expectations of what as to what we could expect Batman stories to be. Now with American Vampire, this is like his chance to show like that hey, like I'm more than just like a superhero writer. It's like I can give you like a solid create your own story that basically trades on gives you like interesting takes on stories like other than like superheroes that are of the DC variety. And it's like I was all about checking that out and seeing what he could do there. But the real thing that got me to check this series out, especially since it was offered in initially offered in like hardcover format, and it's like I'm it's like if you're getting like to follow a series in hardcover format, it's got to be really good. It's like I mean it's like hey it's like got to be a cut above and all, and it's like and well like it was like well Snyder's like name was enough to get me interested in the series. it was one other writer who got me to like fully invest in like, hey, I'm gonna buy this first volume because I want this series to be immortalized in hardcover, and that would be none other than Stephen King. Yes, legendary horror writer, like who has been like churning out like great classic stories like from the 70s like onwards to the present day. It's like I've read like hundreds, now probably thousands of comics at this point, and I've also read like hundreds of books as well. But like Stephen King is like one guy. It's like who I've everything, all like the long form stuff I've read by him, I've never been disappointed by. And more importantly, when it comes to horror, he is the author who's probably written like some of the scariest stories I've ever read. Period. I mean, go read Night Shift, like his collection of stories in the late 70s, early 80s. It's like that. It's like god damn. It's like I still get chills just thinking about that because like there's just that that is just like some of like the scariest stuff I've ever read. It's like and while comics like don't really scare me and it's like but when I think of like actual horror art writers who really actually have scared me over the years, like King is like at the front of the pack. And I will say that his like his stories in that first volume, because basically like the first half of these 5 issues are basically like are Snyder and Albuquerque telling the story of Pearl in the 1920s. On the back half are King and Albuquerque telling Skinner's origin. It's like in the late 1800s. And I don't think that this is going to like rank amongst King's best work, but it definitely does benefit from the fact that he's writing like a more entertaining character here, because Skinner is like the guy like who is like all about me. It's like I am just like in this. It's like in this stuff for myself. And when he gets turned into a vampire by some callous, uncaring European vampire type folks, it's like it's fun to watch him. Just like try and take what's his. It's like over the next subsequent decades. And this first volume, it's like it's got like it definitely shows promise. It's in terms of like showing us hey what is like this new American vampire like, because one of the key things that Snyder like posits for his take on vampirism is that there are different species of vampires, and that they're all specific to like where you know like who makes um like these people into vampires, and just like their geologic region as well, because you've got like the European like vamps and their different species, but you also got like what happens when like some American characters turn into a vampire as well. And like Skinner and Pearl, well, they're different kinds of vampires, because like they actually thrive in the sun, and they've actually got unique weaknesses compared to like other vampires who you stab them in the heart, and, you take out their head. It's like they're dead. But American vampires, they're weak to their specific weakness, gold. So that's where we're at the end of the first volume. And the second volume basically like works to has Snyder, Albuquerque, and guest artist Mateus Santaluco like basically like working on like hey what's going on, what's going to go from here. It's like, and it basically like shows us like what's like the creation of Vegas. It's like, and Skinner's role as well, and not just like what Skinner has in store for it, but also the vassals of the morning star. Basically, it's like as there is a vampire threat to this world, like there is also like a organization that's dedicated to fighting the vampires, and that's where the vassals come in. And when I read volume 2, it's like I thought this posits like the series is as pretty great. It's like just taking what was done in the first volume, and I'm just like running with it. Just like expanding on its story, and just like telling us hey, like there's more to this, like to this more to this story from here. It's like, and I really appreciate. I really thought that was great, and that's one of the reasons why like Volume 2 is one of my best picks of like of 2011, because it basically just like did a job of expanding the story of what Snyder was telling, and just showing you, like where is the story going to go from here. Volume 3, however, well, didn't quite do the same, because it basically like while it gave us a great story of like Skinner's dealing with his like vampire history, well, we also got just like a story of like what happens when like vampires like fight in World War II. It's like, and it turned out to be like hey, it's like everyone's they're dealing with like like an aliens type threat here. It's just like some vampires in Taipan, it's like who are just like like more monsters than anything else. Oh, and also Nazi vampires. It's like in world, it's like on the in the European theater. It's like, because like Volume 3 is like, while I appreciate the fact that they collected like the main issues of the American Vampire plus its concurrent miniseries Survival of the Fittest. Well, it's like it also just kind of like showed the series getting, hey, it's like we're going to be more like action oriented and arguably like silly, like in the sense that it's Nazi vampires and all, but it also didn't offer any like unique perspective on like, hey, like Skinner is shaping the history of like shaping American history in the sense that he was in Volume 2. Volume 4, like continued that thread, like as it asked for some retcons, like showing us how like Skinner was actually like like adopted brother to like his one of its it's like one of his antagonists in the first volume. It's like lawman Jim Book, and this will be important later on when we get to finally talk about the final volume in this series. But it's like just showing that, like showing what he was, just like his. It's just like the first part of like Volume 4 was like retconning like Skinner's rivalry with Jim Book, while also establishing the fact that, hey, there was another earlier American vampire, a Mimete, was also like like a Native American vampire as well. But then you got the main story from this volume, which basically involved a greaser vampire hunter, Travis Kidd, who likes to bite the vampire's back with his own set of wooden teeth, and also just like setting up the fact that, oh, hey, Skinner is kind of like screwed because he's kind of like forced to work for the vassals now, like after events of like Volume 3 turned out to be not in his favor. And there's also like the final arc, which basically had like African American vampire Calvin Poole, the taxonomist of like of the vassals, just like dealing with racism from his own vampiric perspective, while also offering the idea that like that while we talk about like say vampires in this series, well, it's not just vampires. It's basically like all like monsters like are basically part of this whole species of Homo abominum. I'm basically like like zombies, werewolves. It's like like, and as we found out later on, like like abominable snowman. Really, yeah. It's like this is like they're all like part of this like like this like this kind of vampire perspective. So we're kind of like moving like away from the idea that like this is like a vampire history of like of America. It's like, and the idea that like that Skinner, or there's like one vampire perspective, like like who was like like shaping like American history and all, which was kind of disappointing. And then we get to like the fifth volume, which basically deals with it's a collection of like another concurrent miniseries that was run alongside the main series, Lord of Darkness, basically like has Snyder addressing like, hey, what about that vampire? The one vampire that we are all familiar with. How does Dracula fit into the history of American vampire? And I gotta admit, it's pretty interesting, because like we've got, because it's dealing with the idea of like how the vassals have managed to contain Dracula's threat, and how he was originally like like a rumor, contained by that was originally spread by like someone from the vassals with loose lips. But it turns out that a like a specific threat by the Renfield like of this era manages to get Dracula clear of the vassals like uh, get that Dracula clear of the vassals like containment, and now Felicia Book has to deal with this, and also like keep her son like quote unquote her son Gus free of Dracula's influence as well. It's a pretty solid miniseries. It also has like some pretty great art from Dustin Nguyen, but but at the and at the end it's like like I said it kind of like sets up the idea that hey like we're showing you what Dracula is in the in the American vampire world, and it's pretty solid. And it also sets up the idea of like the like other hobo abominum working with the vassals. So I'm glad that so on one hand I really appreciate the fact that DC published these miniseries with like the main issues of American Vampire, because it's like, well, because I mean it's just for the cost effective reasons, but just the fact that it's like it's nice to like get these stories like with the main stories from the main series, because like it's because like they're relevant to like what's being told here. And the story that Lord of Darkness is being told with is like is also about like I gave I it also deals like the blacklist as Pearl. It's like as Pearl has to work with the vessels of Morningstar, because she's been kind of like ambivalent about working like just taking part in this like this vampiric war over the years, because she also lived with her husband Henry. It's like in peace, but when like some of the vampires like who who are working against everyone, to like attack her husband and leave him for dead. Well, she realizes that okay, it's like I've got to like I'm gonna have to be involved in this fight as well. And the blacklist, basically involves like her just like dealing with like evil covenant of vampires in Hollywood, and also having to work with Skinner. It's like after she left him for dead. It's like in the World War II arc. So it's like at this point like I've kind of like um like the fact that like we're not going to get like the specific like hey vampires shaping the history of American history. Like yeah, they kind of are, but it's not like like Skinner was taking like a direct hand in things like in back in Volume 2 with his like like dealings in like the origins of Vegas and all. It's just going to be just hey like there's gonna be like solid vampire action, vampires fighting vampires, and this and Volume 5 is basically the end of the first series of American Vampire, and it does that on a solid note with Pearl having to deal with like the loss of her husband, and with the threat of one of her old friends who has come back to settle scores and all. But the real threat from the series from here on out is illustrated in the final issue, like from Volume 5, which also leads into one of the biggest plot holes in the series, because it has the vassal's bookkeeper Gene Bunting talking with one of his former members, it's like Abelina Book, a it's like a woman who, like Felicia Book's mother. It's like, and also the lover of Jim Book. It's like one of the like with the lawman who was originally hunting Skinner Sweet, and also like Sweet's adopted brother, or Sweet was like Book's adopted brother. But like this first volume basically it ends with like Gene. It's like like talking to Abelina about like the Gray Trader. It's like, and find out that he's basically one of the he was originally one of like one of the fighters against the Beast, one of like basically like the thing that created all vampires, or basically like the Homo abominum species. It's like in the world. And this in this is like a very creepy step as to what the threat from the series is going to be from here on out. And also, this is kind of like when the series kind of starts to lose its focus um because at the time, like Snyder and Albuquerque, their status was increasing. Both from Snyder's work on Batman, it's like Albuquerque's work in this series, and also his incoming time on um what was it, Animal Man? Yeah, that's right. So like basically, it's like they basically said that after like Volume 5, they're going to put the series on hold for a year. And in the meantime, we got like the one shot, the Long Road to Hell, which turned out to be just it's like a fun little '50s era fan service that allowed us to see what vampire hunter Travis Kidd was up to, as some like star-crossed vampire lovers were. It's like we're up to it at the same time, but ultimately it's like it didn't turn out to have any like long-term impact on the overall direction of the series, even though it was collected in Volume 6. And Volume 6 also collected the first American Vampire Anthology, which basically saw a lot of like different creators, like such as Jason Aaron, Becky Cloonan, Declan Shalvey, like take a crack at like telling stories within the like the American Vampire world. Yeah, it's fine, but like I said, it's just really just like to keep interested in the series, like aware, like up until like we got to like the next proper installment of the series, which was American Vampire's second cycle. And this basically started off with Pearl like moving back to her hometown in Kansas and helping like non-evil vampires, basically vampire kids, like find a safe home. It's like under her guidance, but also with dealing with like Skinner encountering the Gray Trader, and like eventually like leading him back to Pearl's out operations, and having her deal with with this guy's threat as well. It's like I think that the idea of the Gray Trader, and also like the idea of the Beast, like the origin of like the thing that originated all vampires, is a solid direction for the series to take. But as it goes on, I mean, it also this like Volume 7 also leads to the biggest plot hole in the entire series, because remember I mentioned like Gene Bunting, who talked to Abilene in a book. Well, the thing is, like, he died or was dragged underground by the Gray Trader at the end of that story. But then we also learn in Second Cycle Volume 1, which is Volume 7, that hey, it's like he also like got stuck underground, like researching another story about the Gray Trader and the Beast, back in the back in the was it 50s or 60s as well. But it's just basically says that hey, wait a second, like Gene Bunting got stuck in the ground once, and then got stuck in the ground again. This makes no sense, and unfortunately, that's kind of a problem for the series as it goes on, because the second American Vampire anthology also tells a story of like how Felicia tries to make peace with the Carpathians, by showing that they've got the blood of light, which is like a thing from the Iskaku, which is from Volume 8, which I'm getting ahead of myself. But this is that the anthology basically like just does not make a solid lineup with the series from what's gone before to what goes to Volume 9, the final volume. In fact, like the final story basically has Skinner like meeting up with like, oh hey, like I found out that that he finds out that Abelina was actually like had resurrected Jim Book. It was like it's like at the end of Volume 5. But when we get to like Volume 9, we find out that like he's like unaware of this and all. It's like, and this is like some, like you're wondering like why is like he not aware of this? Why is like Gene Bunting like like why did he die twice in the series and no one seems to be aware of this? That's disappointing. And then there's Volume 8, which basically after like like after like many volumes, it has Felicia and like and Pearl finally teaming up, which you think that hey, this is something that I would have liked to have seen like prior to this, but like makes sense that now we're do going to do this, but it's basically them like invading Area 51 to get the Iskaku, which is the thing that is going to like have the blood of light, and it's going to allow them to fight like the beast on its own terms. But also Calvin Poole and Skinner Sweet have to go into space to fight to capture like the Russians um like it's like a video like or their photos of the with their spy satellite photos of like of the American uh, like the American like guardianship of the Iskaku, and in order to like make sure that everything's all right, they've got to take things out, but well, it's like things don't go as planned because like turn out there are also vampires. It's like in the Russian satellite. It's like as well. I mean, it's like you got like vampires on the ground in Area 51. You got vampires in space. It's like it's um it's kind of silly. It's kind of ridiculous, and it also kind of feeds into Snyder's predilection for it's like like hey things are going to go wrong for a story. Well, it's like things are going to go wrong until the very end. It's like until like like the story dictates the fact that hey things have to like go right at the end because if they weren't going to go right, then the story would just end right there. It's like because things were going to go bad, and that's kind of like one thing that always like annoys me about Snyder in the sense that it's like it's he like things like he just goes like hey things are like go well for the heroes. Nope. It's like and as much as he likes to do that for his superhero characters, well, he loves doing that in his like creator own stuff as well. So specifically here as well, especially when Volume 8 ends with the fact that Skinner, who has basically had to go through atmospheric reentry outside of a like a like a reentry, it's like reentry pod, and he's basically had his vampirism burned out like alongside things, and that basically leads us to the final volume, American Vampire 1976. It's not advertised as volume 9 of the series, but it is, and it's basically like the concluding volume of the series. It's 10 issues, which basically serve to have like Snyder, Albuquerque, and friends including Francesco Francavilla, Ricardo Lopez Ortiz, and Tula Lotte, um, telling us like the final story of American Vampire. And it's like well Snyder has told some stories that reflect our current like divisive national like ethos, the idea like like the dangers of populism. It's like and just dealing with the fact that hey like so some people on at on the top and like in the nation itself don't have our best interests at heart. Well, he basically like takes us all the way back to 1976, the year of America's bicentennial, and just like shows us that hey it's like there's that same spirit of divisiveness was also present in this time as well, and it also like sets up the idea that Skinner Sweet, who's been human like for a while now, is now like making his living as like an evil Knievel like style Daredevil. It's like up until the point where he's recruited by Pearl Jones to do to help her and the survivors of the remaining members of the Vassals of the Morning Star take out the beast before he rises in the next couple days, and members including Jim Book, who it turns out that his ex lover his lover Abelina, well, she basically managed to resurrect him like from his supposed death back in Volume 1 using some quote unquote questionable means. So like this, so basically this final volume basically like has brings back everyone from the series, Like you got like Travis Kidd is back. It's like, and there's a fun bit in the first volume where like while he's established like he's previously been established like a as a big rock fan, but he's also like been like DJing at a disco club. But it turns out that the only reason he's doing that is because the vampires love disco as well, and well he's managed to like find a way to like turn like the disco ball of the club he's working at into a solar reflective lamp. But when the vampires like like manage to like disable that, he tells like Calvin who's come to recruit him, oh no, don't worry, like I meant you to like to solarify the floor lights as well. And that's fun, it's silly, and so is, and I think that the overall vibe of this final volume is kind of silly as well, because this prophecy has Skinner helping her and Jim to rob the bicentennial train, which has all sorts of like bits of Americana, like from like Rockefeller's limo to Abe Lincoln's hat to Thomas Edison's like first light bulb to George Washington's like farewell address from his second term, which also has the location of the Council of First, which it turns out that Washington actually struck a deal with in order to like help secure American independence. Because yeah, that's right. Washington like helped win the Revolutionary War by getting like some of the original vampires on board and on our side. But the bad news is he had to double cross them because like the Beast had his own plans as well. And then there's also just the standard expectations like, oh, it turns out that someone on our team is double crossing us. It's like, and is it sweet because we know that he went to see the Gray Trader. It's like between like the volumes like 8 and 9, but what did he actually like want to do there? It's like, oh, and then there's the like the fact that like this ball of light from the Kaku, well, it's not working. So we've got to figure out just what do you need to do in order to get it to work in order to like to kill the vampires and all. But it all basically comes down to this big ass fight in the streets of Vegas, between the new human host of the Beast. It's like and the people fighting against him. And yeah, it's like it's like I said, it's kind of the end result is kind of silly. It's like it's not really. It's very far away from the idea that we're getting like that. I felt that we're getting a story of America's history told from like like the vampires that helped influence it. But it's just it's ridiculous. But at the same time, it's like as someone who has been reading the series up to this point, it's still I don't know. It's like it still works. It's like if you've been reading the series up to this point, then I don't think this finale is going to disappoint you because you've clearly internalized its like its failures, its silliness, its ridiculousness, and you also kind of realize that hey, it's like I'm not going to get that like his secret history of the vampire's influence over America, but in the end, it's like it works out all right. It's like and it plays out about as well as you expect. Snyder, Snyder does a good job, like like serving up the twists and the ridiculous style. And Albuquerque, like does a good job, like selling this stuff as he's done, like over the course of the series up to this point. Um, Basically, I'm saying that hey, if you've read the first 8 volumes and you've waited 5 years to read this finale, then yeah, you're gonna want to pick up American Vampire 1976 because it's got the closure you're gonna need, and it may not be as good as you wanted or you hoped it would be, but it's still entertaining on its own terms. So I guess that's that.
Sounds like a recommend for me, at least. From you.
Yeah, it's like I yeah, like I said, if you read like the first couple volumes and you were on board with this, then yeah, you're gonna want to read this. But as it is, it's like I don't know, it's like I get the feeling that I can't help feeling that the series could have been better than it was, but as it is, it's never less than readable, and it's still entertaining. But as far as reading everything, the only thing that's not collected here is the second American Vampire Anthology, which you can get on Comixology for like $8. And I'm not saying that's an essential read. It's got Kieron Gillen's first work for DC, which is pretty solid. Basically like asks, what does like an English vampire do when like the Americans are like American vampires are the coolest vampires now. So there's that. So cool. But yeah, so like there's volumes 1 through 9 in the second anthology. But yeah, it's like you don't need to buy the second anthology. So there you go. Like it's fine. I can't say you're not going to see me talk about this when I get to the best of 2021 like on my list. So there you go.
All right, understood. All right, do you know what you're going to be talking about next time?
If everything goes to plan, like, I mean, I know I promised like this time is going to be about like the girl from the other side, but no, it's like next time it's going to be about the finale to Ajin, Demi-Human, which, well, I got some thoughts on this because my God, this is a series that it's like it wants to be like like a more violent than usual shonen fight action manga series, but man, it's a series that basically like had me rooting for the villains more than anything else.
All right, well, we look forward to your thoughts if everything goes well as planned, and next time on Comic Fix by the Glick.
All right, talk to you later, guys.